Welcome to another round of coffee and donuts. I'm Frank Magaha. If you don't know who I am, I'm a former federal law enforcement officer, now a full-time law enforcement instructor. I have had the privilege of being one of the few in the world to ever honor grad the Federal Law Enforcement Training Center. And on this, we answer your specific hiring questions that you have for going through the police hiring process. Let's discuss. All right, I'm going to jump right into this, and we're going to start with the first question. I have your 3 submitted questions for this week, and they're good ones. I like it. We're going to kick it off with the first one here, which is, do you know the topics to the police writing exam? And yes and no. I can tell you there's multitude of police writing exams out there, or written exams as we call them. The Let's hit the core function here. You can anticipate and pretty pretty much be 100% positive. There's going to be 3 core functions of every written exam, and that is going to be reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary/grammar. You know that those will be on every written exam that you will ever have to do for law enforcement. Then you have other exams that have add-on sections. You know, if you're out in California and you're taking the Pellet B, they have the closed section. Then you have, the NTN, they have video segment sections. Other departments may have other type of writing sections or logic sections, logic games. Some special agent positions, you'll see logic games much like what I took on my LSAT for law school. So there's a multitude of different things that can be added in, but you can, as I said, be almost 100% sure those 3 common components, reading comprehension, writing, and vocabulary/grammar will be on there. And then the way you practice them is depends on your deficiency. So what I would recommend is I would take practice exams. They don't necessarily have to be specifically for that department, right? If that department has a practice exam test that you can buy, sure, do that. The major issue I see with a lot of candidates is they will buy an exam and they will go over that same exam over and over again. And it doesn't work like that. You need a whole workbook, because once you've done the questions one time, you're not answering it based on your abilities, you're answering it based on memory. So it doesn't really help you whatsoever. Now, if, say, English is your second language and you have to take the exam in English, then rereading exam for comprehension and looking up words that maybe you're not familiar with, that's great. That's a good place to start. But when it comes to practicing for the written exam, do not repeat the same test over and over again. Will not work out for you. Just go get multitudes of tests. And here's the thing, little inside tip. There's a lot of exams out there. We kind of put a lot of them together for you guys, and then we have our own workbooks. But the there's a lot of exams out there that are public information, right? So the department posts a sample guide on their department web page, or it's out there and you're able to access it and you're able to go through. Do multiple different exams for multiple different departments. Just because it's not specifically for your department doesn't mean you're not properly preparing. As long as it has those 3 core functions, you're at least preparing for some component of the test you're going to have to take. All right, next one. What do we got here? Okay. Been just about 6 weeks since I was assigned a background investigator. I know that the background can take from 2 weeks to 2 months. It could take a lot longer than that. However, none of my references have been contacted yet. Is this a bad sign? No, this isn't a bad sign, for the sheer fact that you have no idea where they are in the background investigation. They may have started or introduced you to your background investigator, and maybe you even sat down and had an interview. If you haven't had an interview with them, they won't even start contacting your references unless they don't do interviews, right? And the reason why is because, why am I going to waste all this effort trying to track down other people that may not get back to me when I don't even know if I'm moving forward with you as a candidate because I haven't verified your background packet. So if you're assigned and you had an interview with them, then they need to go through and they need to verify other things, work history, credit history, all that stuff. And then they're going to start contacting personal, family, and work references. When they get to the reference check, that is a good sign, right? That is a really good sign. Just because they're not there yet doesn't mean that it's necessarily a bad sign. Depending on the department, it could take, 4 months. It could take 5 months. Some departments, and I'm not trying to scare anyone here, but some departments, if they've already hired and the academy class has already started, they won't even send you a non-select letter until they're into the next academy. And they do that so you can't contest or argue when they say, hey, why wasn't I selected? They'll say, oh, sorry, the academy class has already started. You're eligible to reapply for the next one if you want. And that's it. There's nothing we can do about it. So it just depends on how they go about it. But for the main focus, I would I would say don't sweat it. Now, usually if 6 weeks pass, I usually tell people wait 4 to 6 weeks. And then if you've had zero contact, I mean, no one's been contacted, no references have been contacted, you haven't had any contact from the background investigator or any other person at the department, official contact, email, phone call, whatever, then I would say send a professional follow-up email. Once again, for individuals that have access to our online course, we have templates that you can follow, but pretty much what the professional email should indicate is you not kind of harassing them, more along the lines of you trying to be humble and say, hey, do you need anything else from me, rather than just looking for a status update. All right. But there's a very professional way to do it that also it's much like, you know, interviewing or interrogating someone that's a suspect. There's tips and tricks to get them to relax a little bit so that they'll provide you with more information. But yeah, that's that one. Okay. Now, this one is a this one's a touchy one. This is one I see a lot. Can disclosing unreported crimes such as drunk driving on a personal history statement result in imprisonment? No and yes. So when you say drunk driving, here's one thing, and I'm not really going to go into the weeds on this one, but how do you know you were drunk driving? Was it that you consumed alcohol in the same day that you operated a motor vehicle? At that point in time, were you able to assess your mental state? Now if you say 100% I should not have been driving, well, then you shouldn't have been driving. You take that one on the chin and don't ever do it again, right? You're putting not just yourself at risk, but others. Uh, but if you're saying, "Hey, I consumed alcohol and, you know, significantly later after consuming significant amount of food and water, I operated a motor vehicle." Well, then what was your BAC, your blood alcohol content? What did you blow in a breathalyzer? What did your blood test say? You probably don't have those because none of those ever occurred. So I see this a lot to individuals admitting to drunk driving when they actually never committed it. There's a reason why the most states have a BAC, blood alcohol content, of 0.08 as the legal operating limit, because that's the average of when they found that an individual is pretty much too impaired to operate a motor vehicle, or is impaired. Yeah, is impaired and cannot safely operate a motor vehicle. I'm paraphrasing, but you get what I'm saying. Because if you just did it by days, right? Like let's go off on a tangent here. If you just did it by day and said, "Hey, yeah, you just can't operate a motor vehicle in the same day that you drink," well, that means that if you drink at 1 a.m. in the morning, you can't operate a motor vehicle that entire day. Well, consequently, if you drink at 11:59 p.m. and it's now 12:01, you would be able to operate a motor. That's why they don't do it that way. The most fair and objective way to do it is to set a blood alcohol content that, after research and studies show, this is when an individual seems to be impaired and is unable to safely operate a motor vehicle, or just meets the impairment to not be able to function 100%. The There's a lot to this. Now, that's, like I said, that's just drinking and driving. That's one aspect. I see this all the time. I see candidates admit to drinking and driving when they've never actually, um, one, they've never actually drank and drove. They definitely didn't combine the two, and two, they were never actually impaired when they did this. They say, "Oh, I was at a barbecue with my family. I maybe had one alcoholic beverage or two alcoholic beverages at the beginning of being there, the course of 5 hours went by. Um, and I never had another drink except for, non-alcoholic beverages, and I operated my motor vehicle. Well, because they feel it was in a certain stretch of time that maybe they were impaired. This A standard way of thinking, right? I'm not always saying this is the standard, but a standard way of thinking is one drink of alcohol, however it's measured, to equal, whatever a glass of beer equals this much ounces of wine equals this much of a shot of liquor, is one drink dissipates per hour, right? So with one drink, the effects of that drink will dissipate in 1 hour, so to say, to not actually impair you. Now, once again, don't hold me to that, and don't go out and try to put that to the test. But that's a standard of thinking, or that's one mindset of thinking. So applying that mindset, right? If you had two drinks in the course of 2 hours, and then 3 more hours had passed, and let's say a drink dissipates per hour, if you're talking about the first drink dissipating in the first hour, and then you have the second drink within the next hour, well, then technically it could be said by the third hour of after not consuming alcohol, you're good to go. If you want to go to the extreme here, let's just say two drinks requires 2 hours to be clear. So then at the fourth hour, you would be technically good. At the fifth hour, you shouldn't have any issues whatsoever. That's one thought process. Once again, that's just for drinking. Well, okay, yeah. So if you did report that, hey, I did consume alcohol prior to operating a motor vehicle, it's not necessarily going to get you arrested or even charged. That's not going to happen. That's pretty petty. If you admit to operating a motor vehicle, getting to an accident, and fleeing the scene, and that's an open investigation, then yeah, they're going to charge you if it's an open investigation. Uh, if you admit to a heinous crime, like a really heinous crime, and I'm gonna, like, you know, anything. We'll just say a heinous crime. I'm just not trying to use a specific one because I don't want it to pop any flags here. But if you stick to a heinous crime such as, like homicide or manslaughter or something like that, that's never been detected, and then you admit to it, there's a good chance an investigation is going to be opened into something like that. Um, yeah, absolutely. Something along those lines. Speeding, possible impairment in operating a motor vehicle, running a red light and never getting caught, um, consuming an illegal substance, right? No, no, definitely not. Those things aren't gonna even scratch the surface of what they deal with on a normal basis. But yes, if it's something major, now if I've seen it to where if you admit to certain things like, hey, I hang out with this gang member, right? And I was present when so and so conducted this illegal activity, and that's an open investigation about it. They might put your hiring on pause and start looking into that investigation more. I mean, it's at the prerogative of them. But no, the trivial things that most people think are going to jam them up and they're worried about going to jail for throughout the hiring process, when they're honest, and you always need to be honest on the hiring process. No, law enforcement doesn't care. All right, we understand. And then half the time we understand that you don't really know if you actually even committed a crime. Plus, there's intent and all this other. Doesn't matter. The answer is typically no, unless it's something major, right? Then, or there's an open investigation into it, and you have uh, direct knowledge of that incident. They might look into talking to you a little bit more about that. Okay, I hope this helps. These are your questions for this week. If you want more or anything like that, just know that we answer every question that you guys ask on YouTube. Another little hidden bonus is we just recently opened up a new blog where we post daily in there, and that's another place that you can submit questions, as well as on our website. All that can be found on our website at armageddonct.com. I hope this helps. Stay safe and I'll see you next time.